I am super excited to be here with my good friend Timothy
Hello.
Duval.
Hello.
Um, Hello, world. Uh, I'm glad you are here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is the Riddlers channel. This is actually my good friend that I've known for more than 5 years. I feel like. I
Yeah,
feel like.
more than that, I've known you for a long time, but
Yeah, I've known you, known
like
about you
we've known
for
each
like
other like I know that's a light over there. But
exactly
we became friends in
2016.
yeah, I think it was 16, I
Hmm.
think.
That's when I moved in. I was like, who is this guy? Of all people in this house that I was moving into, I was like, I mean, I'm gonna be, I'll be cordial with him. He seems like a nice guy. But of all the people that would become my hashtag roommate number one, which is still my contact name for you on my iPhone,
That's
to
hilarious.
this day, it's never changed for the last 5 years or six now, is you. So,
Yeah,
yeah. And
we met
like,
we met around the time you were going goo goo for La La Land. So
yes.
it was around
Mm,
there.
those were the days. I love that film. That's another rant for another day though. That's another rant. But this is an amazing time though because I haven't been able to do a video with you and we haven't done a video since like probably
Yeah,
2017
probably not
and
since you moved out. I don't I think the last one we did was John Wick 2.
yes, the cold open. Oh
Yeah,
my
that
gosh,
was
we
the last
stayed
one we
up till
did.
like what, 4, 5, no, like 7
Later.
a.m.
We stayed
Oh
up
my,
till later. Yeah.
that was Bobby Beal's birthday, and he was like, "Yeah, I want to get shot in your video, or I want to die off screen." When you did when I think you were the one who had the idea of when there's like two gunshots or multiple gunshots that go off, you flicked a light switch or something outside, so it looked like there was gunshots going off, but it was really just your porch light. I was like, that's hilarious. I was watching it. I'm like, you were a genius. And then you just added the gunshot sound effect. I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Wonder if
That
that
was
effect holds
so.
up.
I mean, dude, I'm not lying. I literally watch that at least once every 2 months. When I get
Really?
bored, I watch it every time. Or the Bye Bye
Wow.
Man.
I haven't seen it,
Dude,
and so I went on your YouTube channel yesterday just to kind of get a refresher. I was like, what have we done? I was actually kind of impressed. You have a couple hundred videos. That's a lot.
I know
Um,
I've been building it up, and honestly, okay. Before we continue,
yeah.
I need to mention this. This guy right here, guys, Tim. He honestly is the one that introduced me to the world of Adobe Premiere.
Oh,
He literally, I remember, I'm a visual learner, but also I remember telling him like, hey, could you like, here's my iPhone, could you do like audio recordings? Still to this day, I have audio recordings of this guy telling me what I need to do in order to either complete, videos like this that I'm doing right now. Just simple editing. And then further on the lines, he basically taught me even more stuff when it came to specifically Adobe Premiere, which is my favorite editing platform personally. But it's this guy. This is the guy that has taught me and honestly teaches me more in life than I ever thought I ever needed. He is the mentor I never knew I wanted, but he's the one that I deserved. And yes, we are here with Tim, and we are here to talk about
you're
the
touching this old
Batman.
fossil's heart, man.
I love you and I respect you, and
I
you
love
hold this very
you.
very special place in my heart. You're not just my friend; you are somebody that I look up to, and you have taught me a lot. And let's just say this, without getting into details,
Okay.
you have been there through my darkest moments. You have been there when I've lied straight to your face, and you're like, Jack, what really happened? And I'm like, oh God. We are talking about probably the most anticipated movie of originally 2021 and now 2022
I would probably
is,
say this might be one of, if not the most anticipated movies since the turn of the decade, honestly.
I mean, hey, I kind of agree with you. This is like, I mean, no shade, no tea to like the other DC films when it comes to this character, the Batman, because I know we've had Ben Affleck, and I really dug his portrayal, and I still think he's a great Batman. Um, but when it comes to this film, I haven't felt this way towards a character specifically when it comes to DC since The Dark Knight Rises. Because I remember having that experience in the theaters. I went to South Center with a group of friends back when it was only like midnight screenings. Like now we have 4 p.m. screenings, which is crazy for Thursday. I'm like Thursday, night previews. And that's just insane. But back in the day, I stayed up till midnight, watched the whole dang 2-hour and 45-minute Dark Knight Rises film. And I felt like, because we talked earlier where you had this feeling in your chest when there was a sequence with Bane and Batman fighting. And I think I know exactly what you mean. And for me, that was basically majority of the whole film for me, where it just felt larger. It felt
like
the
I forgot
scale
to
of
breathe.
it.
Honestly, that's kind of what it was like. It was like I forgot to breathe because I was so invested in what was happening at the moment. Granted, I didn't feel that way through all of the Dark Knight Rises.
There's some issues. Specifically the Dark Knight, I have that throughout that whole feel that movie. And personally, I think a lot of people sleep on Batman Begins. I think that's a very solid origin film. Very solid. Action sequences kind of when I was rewatching it the other day.
It's funny because when I watch people's like my favorite Batman movies, blah blah blah, YouTube just plays all day while I work. I freelance for a living, so a lot of work is looking for work, and so I'm at my computer a lot. So a lot of videos just play on a monitor off to the side. And there was one that played a couple days ago where a guy's like, I rank all 42 Batman movies, and I'm like, all right, that'll chew up some time. But
that's a lot of work too.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
But Batman Begins was his number 2. I don't know if I would say
really.
I don't know if I would say people sleep on Batman Begins. It's just that it didn't make the same impression that The Dark Knight did.
It's just people like when people talk about the Dark Knight trilogy, everyone always talks about the Dark Knight.
Yes.
And some people do talk about Batman Begins, and I would say I would agree, and I would think you would agree on this. The Dark Knight Rises is probably the weakest of the trilogy, but it's still a good film, which is very impressive to say for most trilogies.
It is. My issues with that movie, which is not the movie we're here to talk about, but
it's a great film. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Batman. We can talk about whatever.
No, but my issues with Dark Knight Rises were that the things that it did different tamper with Batman as a character. It's kind of the problem I have with adaptations as a whole. It was one of the big issues I had with Cowboy Bebop, is that I honestly felt like it wasn't even really an adaptation, because to me, an adaptation is taking the characters and putting them in like different scenarios or an adjusted scenario. What something like Bebop or Dark Knight Rises did was it did things to change the fabric of the characters. Like what they did in Dark Knight Rises, he figures out, or starts to figure out, one of the biggest plot points of the movie, in that Ra's al Ghul. In my world, he's Ra's al Ghul. I know everyone says Roz, or in the 90s cartoon, he was Ra's, and that's what I grew up with. So he figures out that Ra's al Ghul has a child through a dream. And I was like, he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, not a prophet.
Yes. I remember, this is what I remember from that film with that character. My father's work is complete. Oscars. Marion something. She's a great actress. She's phenomenal. Yeah. Love her in Inception. But that death scene.
She was a great, and I have a hard time blaming actors, because at the end of the day, the actor did what they did, and the director said, that's the one. That's the take I want, Yeah.
It's like, Christopher, what was going on that day? What was going on, Christopher? And now we're finally talking about the Batman. We could talk forever, guys, but now we are finally talking. We could talk for like literally hours about like air. Like, so I'm not even lying. But I know that I can talk. I know both of us can talk forever, but I've already done my review, and some people know my general thoughts, and I'll get more into that. But right now, I want my guest. I want you, Tim. I want to hear your general thoughts. So, like, we'll first talk in I guess in a non-spoiler term for like maybe a couple minutes, just to have your general thoughts on the film and your score. Sure. And then we can move into the spoilers and the specifics about what we love and what we maybe didn't particularly love or just didn't particularly like.
Yeah.
So after you, man.
I really liked this movie. This was a really good movie. And it was not only a good Batman movie, it was just a really good movie. And I appreciate the movie taking that. It's a risk, but it was a really calculated risk of respecting the audience enough to know who Batman is when you go see it. So this movie doesn't give you the Thomas Martha Wayne death scene. It doesn't give you the whole origin like Batman Begins did, which was fine because it's literally called Batman Begins. It's about that. But this movie's not. This movie starts 2 years after Batman decides, hey, I'm gonna do this for a living. And it is a little bit of a risk to do in case someone's new to the character, but it doesn't take much to get caught up to speed on the character. Just a quick bit of reading, and it's not enough to, I don't think, hamper the movie in any way, or and I think the trade-off for the movie telling the story it wants to tell was ultimately worth just kind of cutting out the origin story to begin with. We can get more into how we feel about this adaptation of the Batman character. But that being said, I think Pattinson himself did a really good job. I think all of the actors were really good. I loved Zoe Kravitz's take on Catwoman. I love that they chose to go with the version of the character that genuinely has compassion for the people around her. I feel like that's an adaptation of Catwoman we don't get very often. Instead of just being purely selfish and in it for the money and in it for the score, but still has a thing for Batman. This is closer to like the year one version of the character that does work in the seedy part of town and whose compassion has grown despite her surroundings for the people and the other women who have to work in that world around her. And I think she did a really good job with that role. Colin Farrell is unrecognizable. I thought he did a good job. It was that role, I feel like, is the kind of role that you can just sink your teeth into. It's I don't think it's a role that requires like deep mental method.
You just have fun with it. He was like, he was chewing up the scenery every time.
I think he had
every
fun,
time,
and it showed. I was actually a really big fan of Jeffrey Wright playing Gordon. I'm
really glad you said that, man.
Really liked his take on Gordon. He is the not yet commissioner. And I honestly can't think of anyone that I was like, yeah, they were okay.
Everyone did their part. Like, everyone was so integral, and it wasn't like one character was, just pulling their punches. They're like, I guess I'll show up on set and do a whatever job.
Everyone did their part. This movie's beautifully shot.
Oh yeah,
gorgeously shot. There was one shot in the entire movie that I was like, that looks a little goofy. Just one, and that's it. And the funny thing is, I feel
like I know which one too. I want to guess. Let me guess. Okay.
Oh, you're gonna guess now? Okay, go for it.
Okay. It's in the third act.
I don't think it was. No.
You don't think it? Okay. It's where.
What's your guess?
It's the scene where Batman is. It's not necessarily a spoiler. I know we're not in spoiler territory, but it's in the trailer. I know that for sure. It's a shot where he's holding on and somebody is pointing a gun at him, but it's like showing a blurry background.
No,
I thought that shot was a little weird, personally. The CGI was kind of weird, but okay, what was it? What was the shot? Now I need to know.
It was when he jumps off the GCPD building and he's in the city, and the camera's like, it almost looked like It looked like they strapped. Yes, that's the one.
I mean, I kind of get it. When I watched it a second time, I was like, I'm kind of fine with it. Like, I see what they were going for, but it does feel like green screen, and then just Robert's head just as a
really
freaking.
It felt like they were like, all right, and we'll just open After Effects, put on a warp stabilizer, and render that. Like, I was like, oh boy.
But the shot where he's going down, besides like his viewpoint, I thought the shot where he goes down, that was like, whoa. But then it goes down and you're like, oh.
And the funny thing is, I don't think it was a bad shot. The only reason I say it looks that a little goofy is because everything else was so good. Like, if that shot was in a different movie, I might not have pointed it out, because
everything was like so superior. Like the quality of it was so intentional.
So well. This movie, I swear, this movie was shot. I don't know if you're gonna get this kind of joke that I'm about to say. You probably will, because you've learned a lot of tech over the last few years that I haven't lived with you.
Let's see.
This movie feels like it was shot at an aperture of like 1.
Yes. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
At like F1.
Yeah, so like nothing higher. Nope, not doing that. I get it. Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, was like, "We're only doing ones, baby. That's all we're doing. That's it." And I'm like, "I'm for it." I'm like, "Dude, go for it, man."
It was beautifully shot, but man, I was like, God, I don't think there's been an F4 this whole movie.
I will say this now that you bring that up. I think to me, it's not just some of the best lighting I've ever seen in a comic movie. It's some of the best lighting I've ever seen in a film. Like the shadow shots, like the opening in this film, like obviously with like, like with the Riddler sequence, I thought that was amazing. But then when Batman's doing his voiceover and the music bump, 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 and then the shadows, you get the shots of the criminals like being in like terror, and then you just hear that line, "I am the shadows." I was like, we're only like 8 minutes into this 2-hour and 56-minute movie, and I have goosebumps. Yeah. Like, what the heck? Sorry. I had to mention that because the way they utilize the lighting in that sequence and in multiple scenes, especially where like the bat signal is at, some of the most beautiful shots. Like, oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
Beautifully shot. And I saw it in IMAX. I saw it with my mom. She and I hadn't gone out to see a movie, just us, since Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Well,
this redeemed that for sure. That redeemed that film. This film redeemed that, I mean.
And so I was like, "Hey, want to go see Batman? I'll pay for it." She was like, "Sure." So we saw it together in IMAX. And my mom's not a cheap date, I'll tell you. It's $48.
Like, geez, Mom, pulling my leg here. Gosh.
It was my idea, but she bought dinner beforehand, so it's all good.
Hey, that's all good.
So, and she loved it too. My mom's she's not like a pushover with movies. She loved it. She thought it was really good. I'll have to get more into some of her feelings as we went through the movie too. I feel like it's hard to get into a lot of the stuff I liked or didn't like without getting into spoilers. So I'll wrap up the non-spoiler stuff here. Beautifully shot. There was no actor that I was like, like all the actors.
There's one actor I noticed you haven't mentioned though.
Yeah, because and
you want to wait till the spoilers?
Obviously, Paul Dano, but I mean, the movie went so far into hiding him. They didn't even show his face in the trailers.
Yeah.
That I feel like it's hard to talk about him without talking about any kinds of spoilers, because
he's technically only in 3 scenes. When you think about it, he's in, as in his face, I mean, like showing his face. He's in like multiple scenes as like Riddler through like the phone or whatever, but he has one scene in the diner, then Arkham Asylum, and then back in Arkham.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, he's literally only in like showing his face. Like it probably only took him like 2 weeks to film his sequences, honestly.
His face is in 3 scenes. Yes.
Yeah.
He is in more scenes, but his face is only in Yeah, which fine with me,
No,
honestly.
yeah, completely fine. I have no complaints about that. But I was like watching it a third time, not wow, second time, and I was like, yeah, you only see him for a little bit, which I'm completely fine with.
Mm. Um, I yeah, the only reason I haven't said anything about Paul Dano yet, who I will say, obviously he was incredible. He the movie goes so far out of its way to hide him in the marketing and the trailers and everything that it's like, I honestly, I almost can't really say anything in a non-spoiler section of your video.
Yeah.
It's funny because when a movie is so good, but it's 3 hours, it doesn't feel like it's 3 hours. You're like, wow, that breezed right by. This
Mm.
movie for me did not feel like it breezed right by, but still like in a good way. It was like, I'm glad to be putting 3 hours into this.
I'm so glad you said that. Literally, because usually when I watch movies that I really love and they're long, I'm like, wow, that like felt like 2 hours,
I
right?
know.
I remember the first time watching it, I looked at my wife and I was like, hey, what time is it? And we were only an hour and a half in. And I was like, we still have like an hour and 20 minutes, but I didn't say that in like, oh my God, this movie's long. I said like, oh my God, this movie's long. Yes. Let there be
Nice.
more. Oh yeah. What would you give it out of 10 officially? That's the last thing I want to know.
Okay. Um, I would give it a malleable 9.
Okay.
Um, malleable, if you go back to science class, malleable means that it's flexible or prone to change. And I mean that in like a good way. Like this movie was a pretty solid 9 for me, and I could bring it up to a higher 9 if I see it again and think on it a bit more.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like this, like from what I'm kind of understanding, like if you probably watched it again, it's a strong possibility that you would even enjoy it even more.
Yeah, yeah, it's possible
Mm.
that I could. Um, because I mean, some of the things that happen in this movie are the kinds of plot twists where you're more like, rather than like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah. And like I
Yeah.
wouldn't even say like it was actually funny that you bring up that word plot twist because I would say it more as like revelations. And because like I think somebody asked me about how is this movie super predictable? And I'm like, I wouldn't say that it's predictable. I
No.
would say that the way that characters and story arcs are interwoven, and the more the story and the first act to the second act to the third act, it gets bigger and bigger, and you get more pieces to the puzzle, more revelations happen,
Yeah.
and you're like, by the time it's over, you're like, I think I forgot to breathe. So guys, now we know. Now we know Tim's score is a 9, and it might get better for him. But I'm gonna briefly go over my generals, non-spoiler thoughts, and then we'll get into the spoiler territory. But if you also want to actually watch my non-spoiler review, go right up there and click it. And don't forget to like and subscribe to that video in my channel. Please subscribe. I need the subscribers. Please, I need this. I will do the shameless plug into my own video, and I don't care. Subscribe. Overall, I think it's not just a great film. I think it is a perfect Batman film. I think it is the perfect Batman film in the sense of Matt Reeves really knew how to pinpoint certain layers that I never thought I would see in a live action depiction of the Batman. And I really think he got it down to a T. And he did some really different, unique things, like having more of a focused, depressing, brooding Bruce Wayne and Batman, and they're kind of one and the same. And usually with depictions like Christian Bale, you have him being like, hey, I'm a jerk, but I'm only doing this because I want to push the people away that I love because I need to make sure that I keep them safe. Because really he does care, and he's a very selfless person. But with this one, all he cares about is the work that he's doing for the city or in the name of his father, Thomas Wayne. And I think Matt Reeves really got it, and I really love the portrayal of this version of Batman. I love the villain. I thought there was actually an amazing kind of reveal for him in the third act where you realize how they're connected. And I really liked it. I really liked the motivation behind why he was doing what he was doing, because it really went back to why Batman is doing what he is doing. But overall, yeah, I thought the world of Gotham was so well realized and visualized, kind of like Todd Phillips' Joker. I think that one did a little bit of a better job in the sense of like grimy and disturbing and creepy and eerie. But for this being a Batman film, as a Batman movie, it's the best Gotham depiction. But as a general DC film, I think Joker was the better version, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I can go more and more like with what Tim touched on, like the cinematography I thought was flawless with majority of the scenes. I thought there was like at least 2 shots where I was kind of like, it's not like terrible, but it's not like the same quality. The lighting, the score. My God, Michael Giacchino, he is becoming another GOAT. He is becoming surprisingly one of my favorite composers out there. I remember a couple years ago when I think he did some of the score for Star Trek. That's when I started to notice him. I was like, this guy's actually pretty good. And then I think he did Doctor Strange, and that's personally one of my favorite scores from Marvel. Because to me, MCU scores are kind of bland. And in 2013, 2014, that's when things started turning the tide. But with this case, with the Batman, this guy's a genius. I didn't think we were going to have another hit for the Batman theme. I'm like, we got Tim Burton's, we got Danny Elfman's score, we got Hans Zimmer's, yet again in the DCEU. And what was the other one? There was another
Junkie XL.
Junkie XL. I honestly loved what he did. But, and I'm not saying it's my favorite. I'm not saying that. But it is so catchy to me. I find myself humming it in the car or at work. Bum, 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 bum.
You know what's funny is just like the one in the Nolan movies, it's 2 notes.
Yeah. And sometimes
all right.
Like the most simplest things can be the most powerful things. And the way Michael Giacchino uses that same theme over and over, and like to somebody, it could be like, wow, that's kind of repetitive, but the way he approaches it, I thought was tremendous, how he utilizes that multiple times throughout the film. That's my overall thoughts. I really, really dug it. I think it's a really good script as well. I think some of it has some of the best lines I've heard in a Batman film since The Dark Knight. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Like some of that dialogue is in this film. I absolutely loved it. But okay, now to spoilers. I think first off, I thought Paul Dano was amazing.
Yes.
Tremendous. This is not how it was supposed to go. I love that. I don't know why. And the first, okay, like let's start from beginning to end, I guess, with each spoiler, because I know that I can go zigzag and talk about multiple things. From beginning to the Riddler's character, the first shot that you physically see, because we see the perspective of him looking at a house, and it's the mayor's house. Mm-hmm. And for some stupid reason, my brain went, "Oh, is this like Bruce and his parents?" And then I'm like, "No, I think that's the mayor." And then obviously later on, you figure out it is the mayor, who's he's not looking too good when he's looking at his own what do you call it? A debate, when he's having the debate with I forget the name of that character. She's really good. She's running for mayor as well. And when he walks away, they stay on the same shot. He moves out of frame, and all of a sudden you see the Riddler just standing there.
Yeah.
And I was petrified. I'm not going to say I jumped out of my seat. I wasn't that scared, but I was like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
They are not holding back. They are going for like that serial killer horror thriller, more so horror, not horror, more so thriller suspense vibe than horror. But getting close to that.
They've outwardly said that the main inspiration for this interpretation of the character was the Zodiac Killer.
Oh yeah. And you plainly see that with his outfit. Like with his own outfit, you can see that. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
The saran wrap on his head, I think I read that was his idea.
Yeah.
And the director was like, you don't have to do that, because during a take, Paul took it off and his face was super red.
Mm.
because he's not getting any air in there.
Mm-mm.
Um, and but Paul was like, this is something he would do. Like,
His hair.
this
You
is
don't.
this,
You
yeah.
yeah.
No evidence, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He even later in the movie, it's revealed he has like multiple IDs in his wallet. Like he doesn't want people to know who he is. No, yeah, I mean the opening shot is extremely voyeuristic. It's him. It's a person, a first person view or a POV shot of him
Mm.
looking into the mayor's house, into his windows through binoculars, and the only sound you hear is him breathing. As soon as I saw the shot, I was like, ah, this is the Riddler's point of view. Like
Yep.
at no point was I like, oh, this is Batman. Like, no, this is this is a man hatching a plan.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
it was so creepy, and the way I think the thing that really struck me was obviously the first shot that we see of like physically him standing there. I thought that was so well executed, and it took
yeah,
me off
me too.
guard. I didn't expect for his first appearance to be like that. I knew exactly what the scene was going to be because of the trailer, which I loved. I love how they just get straight to the kill. They get straight to the point. Um,
Yeah, and
and
I think myself and a lot of people are probably expecting for him to just kind of come from out of the shot.
mm,
And while that, yes, probably would have been scary and done its job, this was almost scarier because you see the contrast. Like
yep,
the mayor walks out of frame and you see him just standing there.
he's just right there. You just know
And
he's there the entire
the
time.
Riddler is in the shot when you see him go from just standing there to attacking.
Yep. And
Like,
that's the moment where I was like, whoa, because he could have just hit him, but he did like
yeah, he
that
like
that just
war cried.
he war cried. Yeah, and it just added this level of like this man is insane.
Yeah,
This man
it added
like
brutality for sure.
to me it seemed like he could also, because they didn't like dive into it, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was like mentally unstable in the sense of like he actually has a condition. And I think DC does a really good job with having characters like that and making them even more unique.
Yeah,
But with the Riddler, I feel like that's, to me at least, that's kind of like how I'm kind of perceiving it, where this guy, you know, he is kind of socially awkward, but he feels like everything in the world around him is against him, like almost like he's always had this preconceived idea of the world hates me.
now that we're talking about spoilers, I feel like we can hop all over the board a little bit.
Oh yeah.
The movie went to great lengths in its marketing campaign to hide the Riddler's face. It's just Paul Dano.
It's just, yeah. That was one thing too. I'm like, okay,
you can Google Paul Dano and that is what you're just gonna see Paul Dano. And I kind of knew that too. Like the Riddler is not a scarred person. He is not physically altered outside of just having a very high IQ. He is just a normal looking dude. And it's just him. And I think that played to the movie's favor because I mean it's the menacing factor of having someone who can do so much look like just your average dude.
yeah.
There is something menacing to that. This is obviously, this is not the same Riddler as Jim Carrey. This is not the same Riddler as any of the animated iterations, be it from any of the newer DC animated movies or from the 90s. And this is definitely not your Adam West Riddler, played by, I believe his name is Frank Gorshin. This is the Riddler as the Zodiac Killer. He's brutal. He's very methodical. And his motivation is, I'm not going to say it's justified. It's obviously not justified.
Yeah.
But it's his motivation in the mind of a twisted person made sense. And he is a twisted person. I think one of my favorite scenes with him was all the in-person scenes with him and Pattinson were really good.
Oh
I think
yeah.
one of my favorite scenes was the bomb defusal scene with the DA at the funeral when he's
Mm-hmm.
asking the riddles on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
That
His
was one of the,
acting.
oh my gosh.
He was that's when I agree with you. I think that's when he was really chewing up the scenery. Even
Yeah.
just through like, like the small like, iPhone quality like shot that we got from him. It just you felt everything from that performance, even from just the phone. And you
Yeah.
felt like the dire consequences of what happens if he gets the answer wrong. And
Yeah.
obviously we know at the end, spoilers, the guy dies and he's willing to
Yeah.
die because of, some other characters that we'll talk about, which I really
Yeah.
loved. But no, I agree with
He
you, man.
explodes.
Wow, like he was nuts in that sequence. Like the way he turns his head and he's like, "If you are justice," like
Yeah. That was one of the scenes where when the bomb went off, like there were plenty of times where I could hear my mom next to me go like, "Oh geez, oh my god, oh gee." That was one of them. Was when the bomb actually went off. She was like, "Oh geez."
It's intense.
No, Paul Dano was really good. This is a very unhinged villain. And I think the scary thing about him is as the movie ultimately plays out. Well, I'll get to that a bit later, actually. Moving on to spoilers about a different character, I want to talk about Catwoman a little bit and her relationship with Annika. Annika is a character who she's like another bartender, hostess at like the seedy underground club where criminals hang out. It's the Iceberg Lounge, which, as many nerds would know, is like the Penguins, the club that the Penguin runs. But inside of the Iceberg Lounge, what's it called? The lower minus 44 or something like that.
I think so.
And not Zoe Saldana. Good Lord. Okay.
Zoe Kravitz.
Don't do that. Cut that out. And Zoe Kravitz says,
there we go.
That it's the
jump cut. Zoe, Jason Momoa's daughter-in-law. I think still. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't know that. Zoe Kravitz's character, Selena, says, it's the club within the club, where it's like the real club. And in it, Annika, the girls hang out with the guys to make them feel like they're not terrible people. And she learns something from him that he shouldn't have. And instead of him getting repercussions for having a loose mouth, she's kidnapped. It sounds like he's the one that needs to be taken care of because he's the one with loose lips. But because the idea is that there is no justice in Gotham, she is kidnapped. And I think, like I said earlier, they used her to kind of bring out that compassion that Catwoman's character doesn't normally get. And I really appreciated that. The scene where they actually find Annika's body is devastating.
Oh,
that was probably the most heartbreaking moment of the movie for me. And it made sense that the movie didn't like linger on the body or anything like that, because they find her at this critical moment where criminals are shooting at them. That was devastating. It made sense, but it was so sad.
Yeah, it was like, even though like we didn't really get like a lot of, and that's the thing that's crazy, and it's telling for the writing and the acting. We don't get a lot of scenes of Annika and Selena. You only get really one scene, and then you get a phone call sequence, and then you see
that was terrifying.
The thing
terrifying.
That's the thing that I love about this movie. And this is why I give so much respect for Warner Brothers for believing in this director to make a 3-hour long noir detective film. Like, what? And I'm just really glad Warner Brothers got to this point where they'll even have a sequence where they'll have a 1:40 voicemail go off about some simple dialogue going back and forth and having this brutal sound shriek at the end of it. And they'll commit to it.
Terrifying.
Oh, she was so convincing, and even just the audio, like just hearing that, you could tell they were still going all in for the acting, even with Carmine Falcone, John Turturro, or however you pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
I loved him in this film.
Yeah,
but we can get to
really
later.
Good.
He was yet again the supporting cast, everybody phenomenal in this film.
Yeah,
Like
everybody playing Falcone is just crushing it.
like John to me is probably my favorite, honestly, right now. Like it's him and
That's
then
a
the
tough call.
guy in Batman Begins. I forget his name. That he's really good.
Tom Wilkinson.
He's really good. I
His name's
really,
Tom
really
Wilkinson. I like him.
like his performance. His performance in that film is great too. But yeah, like it just shows the bravery that Warner Brothers has with this director, and it just goes to show this one huge thing. When you trust your creators, you will get this product. When you trust, talented creators, you will get this. And it just goes to show that it works, talent. And when you trust them, it really does work. And I think that also was a message to be told for, personally, I'm going to say it, Zack Snyder's Justice League. If they would have trusted, and I will say this, to be honest, you want to know why they're comfortable with releasing a 3-hour film? Because let me remind you of this random fact. Warner Brothers didn't want to release a 3-hour cut of BVS. They told them you need to trim it 2.5 hours because they were worried about the box office. Then you get a movie like Endgame, and it was the biggest film in the entire world. But granted, here's the thing: it's been building for the last 10 years, so people will go see it, right? But you get this film. And the only, I guess, buildup for a long film is Zack Snyder's Justice League. But also to that, it's a streaming film, so people have the ability to pause and whatever. But this, to me, I think was their big test to see can long films really last in the theaters, and Endgame proved it, right? For Marvel, though.
Well, not only did Endgame prove it, not to get too far off topic, but COVID proved it. The world just got a 2-year crash course in staying put.
That is a good point too. People have been wanting to go back to the theaters, and when you have a film like this that has been on the back burner for 2 years, essentially, people are gonna they're gonna come crawling for it.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone's staying home, so what are they doing? What do? You work from home, you watch games, you watch, or you play games, you watch movies, I mean, everyone has been staying put. So it's in a weird kind of way, it's now honestly like less demanding to ask an audience to stay put for 3 hours because we all just finished staying put for 2 years.
Yeah.
But that being said, still, if you're going to ask an audience to stay put for 3 hours to experience one story instead of 48 little stories spread over a bunch of YouTube videos you have in your watch later playlist, like I do, it should be good. And this movie was never disinteresting to me. I think for me, like, I'm not going to spend too much time comparing this to The Dark Knight, but for me, like, every scene in The Dark Knight is almost like electric. Like every scene added something that felt genuinely important. I don't think every scene did that in this movie, but this is a lot more of a focused movie. This movie is a lot more about Batman himself than something like The Dark Knight was, because The Dark Knight was about how with the right motivation, doing the wrong thing is contagious, even if you're a good person. This is a much more focused story, I would say, than something like The Dark Knight. And that's not in a bad way. It's just the approach it took to telling a story was more like, okay, we're going to hone in on this and not about how doing the wrong thing is contagious, even when you're a good person. What I will say, just kind of I want to tell you what I think the scariest part of this movie was.
Oh, please tell me. Please tell me. I want to know this.
Like, and it was a moment where me and my mom both went like, oh my God. Like, because I looked over at my mom and I was like, this is almost too real. Was the part where Batman puts together that Riddler has herded a bunch of people to fire down on a bunch of innocent civilians from the stadium after he floods the city. So
Mm,
that felt like almost too real, and not in like a bad way, but in a way where I was like, I don't know if I necessarily see someone flooding the city to make it happen, but like it, not to get too much into real life, but there have been things like that that have actually happened where essentially what the Riddler did was he basically found this group of people who are too afraid to do anything alone to come
mm,
together to commit cowardice as a group.
mm.
so that they would
Wow.
so that they would feel courageous, and that felt real. Ultimately, all the riddles that Riddler's been setting up are supposed to lead Batman to these 7 vans that are loaded up with explosives around the city, and when they go off, it blocks the water from the city. So a good chunk of Gotham gets flooded when Batman fails to find these bombs and they go off, and it causes a bunch of people, especially in kind of like the higher society of Gotham, to run to um, higher ground, which is basically like their equivalent of like the Tacoma Dome. Like it's
Mm,
a stadium where events happen and everyone goes there. But Riddler has been kind of herding these followers together online to go there when that happens and sit up in the rafters with a bunch of guns and a bunch of ammunition, and they're all dressed up like him, wearing his mask and his saran wrap that from like an army surplus store and his jacket. They're all dressed up like him to basically kill higher society. um and it and I was like, man, talk about a movie for the times. Like it was the kind of, it's not to get too much into real life, but it felt like the kind of thing that I could see getting busted on like certain social platforms.
mm,
I was like, this
mm,
is harrowing. Kind of nip at the movie's heels a little bit in that probably the people that the Riddler is victimizing the most by flooding Gotham are people who are in his shoes when he was a child. He is so ingrained into his own cause. He's so ingratiated in this mindset that maybe those lives don't even matter to him. But that seems kind of counterintuitive because part of the idea behind what he's doing isn't supposed to just be revenge. It's supposed to be the prevention of it happening to anyone else. But then he's killing a bunch of people that it's probably happening to.
I understand that. I understand that, but I also see it in a way kind of like to get biblical, honestly, because I kind of got a biblical vibe
Like a
from it.
flood, like a Noah's Ark, like a cleanse the world.
That's how I see it. It's
Mm.
like, yeah, but sometimes sacrifices need to be made. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the approach. That's how I, especially the second time, because I thought about that too, where I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're also killing a
And
lot of homeless people, a lot of innocent
yeah.
people, and you're killing a lot of, sick scumbags. I get your plan and it's kind of smart.
Sure.
Like it's not like a plan like Lex Luthor and BVS where it's like really, really convenient. And I can see how some people could be like, yeah, there was a lot of conveniences in this film as well, like how, oh, it's perfect. He steps into the light and then perfect, boom.
Yeah.
He's got it all mapped out. But also, I could see that being like, this guy is a dude who looks at details, and details are important. Um,
Yeah.
but so like with him, I really like I understand what you're saying, but I really see it in the sense of kind of like sacrifices need to be made, and it's like almost like a biblical scale kind of thing where it's like, well, we're restarting. You're gonna
Right.
restart.
Yeah. And I guess looking at it from like a Noah's flood perspective is not a perspective I looked at it at before. And that does kind of make sense. I'll give you that. And at the same time, I'm trying to use like my rational brain when I look at
Yeah.
this. And I'm sitting here analyzing a character he's thinking methodically, but you could argue he's not thinking rationally.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, no, that is true too. Because at the end of the day, like I go back to that thought that I had where it's like he's there, but he's not fully there.
Yeah.
And they kind of tap into the idea of like, mentally unstable people. And, and also we might be getting another mentally unstable character coming up here soon. I have a theory.
Do we want to talk about this now?
We could say that. How about we save that for the very end? Let's say that for the very end. This is going to be a long review. We're already at like an hour and something minutes, man. Gosh. I'm loving this. It's going to be this is going to be a 2-hour long video, Tim. You gotta be freaking kidding me, man. I might have to trim some of this down, but I'm not
trim what
I'm not lying. I might even just leave it. I might even just like raw. Just raw. Except for some things like us looking for answers and then just us jump cutting. But majority of this, I can see this just being a raw 2-hour review, which I'm excited for it to get 5 views. You jerks. Come on, watch this video. You jerks. We work really hard for this stuff. Don't forget to subscribe. I love you guys. It's about community. Were there any more thoughts you wanted to go over, Riddler, or was there another character in particular in a spoiler territory that you wanted to get more into?
I haven't really talked about Batman himself.
Yeah, let's talk about him. Let's do it.
Pattinson did a really good job. Here's what I mean. The director saw what Pattinson did and said, cut, print, that's the one. Pattinson did his job. In this movie, it took a little while for me to kind of warm up to Batman in some ways, but not in every way. In the Nolan movies, Batman feels like a force. He honestly kind of feels beyond human. The first time you see Batman in Batman Begins, he is taking out lights without being seen. He is turning the environment into his terrain. He is turning this place that all these criminals are super familiar with into something they don't know anymore. And this movie took, I think, a right step in introducing him as a force. And then when I first saw him, I was like, it felt like a half step back, because I really like this. I love the montage of the criminals in the city, like, just breaking various laws and doing bad things, like the spray paint can falling into the shadows and him being too scared to go get it.
Yes.
I loved that. I loved the idea that like Batman knew he'd put so much fear out into the city against the people who are, against being a good person, that even they wanted to like stay in the light.
Yeah.
Like normally
the city's too big. I can't be everywhere.
I know. Where criminals before would hide in the shadow, now the criminals are even too scared to be in the shadows. And now they're in the light. And I really liked that idea. It just took a little bit for me to feel like this Batman is a force. And yes, I understand this is a different take. And I also understand that this Batman did not train around the world like every other iteration of Batman. It sounds like the only fighting this Bruce has learned is actually from Alfred. There is something I kind of like about that, because it by default makes this kind of a rough and tumble Batman. Like, he takes hits.
I loved that.
His suit is laughably bulletproof.
It's that one sequence. You gotta admit that one. You know what I'm talking about? This really sequence cool. That is amazing.
Even my mom was like, "That was a really cool fight." And my mom's not like a huge fight scene person. Like when the Bane fight in the sewers from Dark Knight Rises came on, my mom's like, "I don't like this part. I don't want to watch this part." But in this movie, she was like, "Oh, that was really cool."
The music, like the lighting, when you see the gunshots go off, I was just like,
yeah.
No, what did I just watch?
It was really
good. I was like, wow.
Even the first fight scene where he's, beating up the guy and he's like, "Oh, vengeance." It was really cool. It was really good. It just took a little bit for me to feel like this Batman was. It's so hard to describe, because in some ways Batman feels almost supernatural. But he's a man because you know who Bruce is, the duality. But when the movie puts you in the criminal's perspective and not in Batman's perspective, he feels like a genuine force. At the end of the movie, when he like lights up the entire roof and drops in on all the snipers, that was a moment where I was like, this man is a force.
Dude, the sound editing, the sound mixing, like I remember just like kind of like a little bit going back to your thought of like how like, you know, how he had the goons there, and he even though Riddler was in prison, he had this so well thought out plan that he didn't even have to be there. He had his followers to do the rest. And I remember I went over, I leaned into my friend. And I was like, you're about to crap your pants right now. And then that scene, I was like, the first time I watched it, I was like, I love you, Matt Reeves.
Yeah,
really I love you, Robert Pattinson. I was like, wow. I had to describe that feeling because I that was a force, like you're saying, like,
yeah,
like I can understand
like
what you mean, like and where it took some time.
I think part of that feeling of it being like a force comes down to a couple things. One is that when it happens, you're usually seeing things from the criminal's perspective. The other thing is that this movie has much more screen time for Batman than it does for Bruce Wayne.
Love that.
The other movies in the past, honestly, all of them, even going back to like the 1989 Batman, it had a lot of split time between the two of them. And a lot of those movies made it feel like Bruce and Batman were two different people.
Yeah.
Not this movie. And some people have slighted this movie for that.
I know.
I'm still honestly trying to figure out how I feel about how because when I watched this, the ultimate message of the movie that like the takeaway for Batman, because Batman learns a very valuable lesson too, is that
vengeance.
Being fear is one thing, but he needs to be hope too.
Hope. I need to be, what does he say? I need to be more, or something like that.
Even when he was saying that, I knew, I was like, oh, the more is hope. And just because I knew that ahead of time before he said it, didn't make it less of a message to me. So this story is kind of him coming to terms with like, how does he be hope? Bruce Wayne and Batman become two different people. Bruce Wayne, like, Batman can still be fear and hope, but Bruce can do more to put hope in the city in ways that Batman cannot, and vice versa. Batman can put hope into Gotham where Bruce Wayne cannot. And I'm hoping that kind of where they go with the character is that the lesson he learns in this movie helps create the duality between Bruce and Batman, because there is not duality between them in this movie. They are the same person. He is just as moody as Bruce Wayne as he is as Batman.
And I think that's what Matt Reeves was honestly going for, because I remember I watched this review, like somebody basically had this preconceived idea of what Batman should be to them, and I'm like, I totally get it, because I even have that too. Like everybody, I think, has that, and maybe more people have the same opinion of Batman as this other group, but I don't know for sure.
I'm not.
But it's like
Batman killing criminals, but Zach. Oh, no.
Zach's like, I love this. Give him a gun at this point. AK-47. But that's another rant.
What really bothers me about that the most is like, if Jim Gordon knows Batman is killing criminals, Jim Gordon is aiding and abetting multiple homicides.
Leave it to Zach to tell the story. Leave it to Zach. What I can explain is, but with this Batman, I mean, I think I can understand when you mean, because obviously at the end of the day, you do feel that force, and that's really cool to hear that you do feel like, he's solidified at the end.
It took me a bit to feel it at first. And also, I think another part of that comes with the genre change, because a lot of people are saying like, oh, this is a neo-noir, blah, blah, blah. I feel like people throw the word neo in there just to sound a little bit more artistic. I don't know what people mean by that. Yes, this movie is more akin to the detective noir style flicks of earlier decades, obviously with a pretty, a bit more grime to it. It doesn't have like the slick writing of like a Double Indemnity or something like that, which is a really good movie if you haven't seen it. It's from 1944 and I highly recommend it. It doesn't have that kind of like sheen to it. But at the same time, that's okay. It doesn't have to. It's not supposed to. Yeah, no, they feel like like getting off topic here.
No, you're good.
um yeah, there's not a lot of duality between the two, but I'm hoping part of what this movie leads to is that duality, is them imbuing hope into people in ways that the other cannot. That being said, a lot of people have been like, oh, Pattinson's so flat, he's joyless, he's this, he's that. I thought he did a really good job. I was fine with it. I'm not gonna say he's my favorite Batman. He's not. But I still think he was a really good Batman. And I think Pattinson easily did well enough to earn his place playing the role. He's a good actor who, you know, I'm glad that he didn't get stuck in the Twilight funk, you know, like, oh, you were that guy, you know, like not getting cast in other parts because they did a movie, or did a franchise, or needed a paycheck, or needed to pay rent, or whatever. You know, I didn't see the Twilight movies. I saw clips and I was like, oh God. And
I've seen them all. Guilty.
You know, I saw him in Tenet and he did a really good job. I saw him in The Lighthouse. He did a really good job. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm fine with this dude playing Batman. It's all good. The times where he did really feel like a force to be reckoned with, I was really happy about those times. Not the least of which was the chase scene between him and the Penguin on the highway.
Can we talk about that when you hear that engine, the sound, like you saw it in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX too. I was like, I was like, Vin Diesel, you sit your butt down right now. Batman. I was like, let's go. Like,
get out. Yeah.
I haven't felt that exhilarated with like a car just starting, like, since a Fast and Furious film, like, because, you know, obviously they're car movies, but with this one, like, they really, really showcase the Batmobile in a way that I think it's my favorite introduction to the Batmobile.
I think it might be mine too.
It's so good.
It is a souped up muscle car, but it's gorgeous. And when like the camera moves over to the alley and you first start to hear the engine rev, my mom just goes, oh boy. And my mom's not like a car person. We grew up driving a bunch of Buicks, but
she heard that bad boy go off and she's like,
the significance of this. Listen, this whole thing is a 2-hour video about how cool my mom is. When I went to go get my
shout out to your mom.
My mom's a charge nurse at a Vax clinic, and when I went to go get my booster shot, I was literally surrounded by medical staff. Literally, like 3 or 4 people. I'm filling out paperwork, and they're all across from me at the table. All of them are telling me how much they love her. All of them. I was like, my mom is with it. I was literally surrounded by people telling me how much they love her. Yeah, that Batmobile started revving and she was like, oh boy. And the whole scene on the highway, I had a tightness in my chest of just being like, this is so special. This is so good. One thing I will say, if I could pick at that scene just a little bit, just a pinch at it. I will say it kind of felt like it was being filmed on a small studio. And I don't mean that necessarily a bad way. The scene is for being a big chase on an open highway, it's a very claustrophobic scene.
Yeah, they use certain shots where like you see them in full frame and a slight background of like what's going on.
Again, aperture 1. It's shot at f1. The whole chase scene is shot at f1. And a lot of close-ups on faces of Batman and the Penguin as they're going through the highway, and a lot of the big thing that does it is the rain. It's raining so heavily through a lot of this movie that part of me was like, oh, I believe this is in a studio.
Can we talk about when everything's crashing and then he just goes, he just bumps it up, accelerates, and then perfectly. I know it's kind of convenient, but I don't care. I thought it was awesome.
I know.
The ramp just is like right there, and he's like, I got you.
Yeah.
I know I've seen that trailer like 10,000 times with that ending, but it still felt, and that's the power of how like Matt Reeves was filming it and the pacing of it and just how we got his shots, how like you said, claustrophobic it was. It still felt like it was my first time experiencing that moment.
When the Batmobile came through the flames again, my cool mom just goes, "Oh man!"
Oh.
She's like laughing, and she's like, "Oh man!"
You screwed up now. You screwed up, Penguin. Gosh, that and that beautiful shot that they showed in the trailer from Penguin's perspective. The Batman flipped over.
The look of panic on his face. She laughed at that too. Like we were into this movie. Both of us were into this movie.
I will say, I have this thought, and I know I'm probably gonna forget. I want to mention this real quick. This is a film that kind of like we talked briefly a little bit about it, where it's kind of like you kind of already know the character. You don't really need to go into, his origin and how he had the idea of becoming the Batman and his parents' death. But weirdly, in a cool way, and I didn't think about it until actually my wife told me in the car right after the film and blew my mind on what the beginning of the film meant. And especially leading to the moment that something in the way starts, when Batman is staring at the kid who just lost his dad. Yeah. And this film has a Thomas and Martha Wayne kind of scene where you see a character that is deemed good, and you later on realize that a boy witnessed, or at least witnessed the aftermath of a tragic murder, a ruthless.
He was seeing himself in that boy.
Yeah, and when she pinpointed out what that meant, it was like, in a way, we still got the classic Thomas and Martha, opening, but in a completely different way. And I was like, when she said that, I was like, I love Matt. Like, my eyes opened up wide. I'm like, Matt Reeves did like almost kind of like, he's a genius with what he did. He was like, we don't need to do that, but we can do that in a way more interesting way, in a sense of like, and I'm not saying the Thomas and Martha thing isn't interesting. It is. It's just been done over and over. It's redundant, but it's so cool that I didn't even notice that. And that's how good it is, where it's like Batman feels even more involved, like he needs to crack this case because he sees the product of the aftermath of like this boy and what he's going to deal with for the years to come. And then
it could create more Batmans.
and even seeing that moment, it just, and the music starts, something in the way, and you just see, and that's the beautiful thing about this film. Even though it has some amazing shots, sometimes it's just a plain shot of an actor right in the center, and they're just letting the actor do their thing.
Yeah.
Whether that's just through stares, which there's a lot of that in Robert Pattinson. There's something about his eyes in this film that do most of the acting for him. I think he has, it's a weird comment, I know it sounds weird, but he has the best Batman eyes, I think. I know it sounds weird, but like, you feel so much emotion, especially from that first scene. You get everything what this movie is going to be about from that scene where he looks at the boy and the boy's looking back at him.
I also love the sequence where Batman at the end is just helping people. Like, he's just helping people out of the water. He's carrying them out of the building.
That has some of the best shots.
Yeah, I know, the flare, the overhead flare where everyone's following him.
It's like an Exodus moment. Come on, it's like
I know, and yes, it is really good.
It is. Come on,
it is. But it was a nice change of pace to see Batman essentially doing what everyone around him was doing. Like, in a weird way, it was the moment where the city kind of decided to trust him.
Yeah.
And it was also like, at the same time, it was also the moment where he became just like everyone else around him, just trying to help. Like, he was helping firefighters, paramedics, ambulance. Like, he he wasn't like, oh, there's a robbery down the street, I'm just gonna,
Yep. Yeah.
swing away and go do something else. He 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 felt like it was the closest he felt, I think, throughout that movie to being the common man.
Yeah.
And it was a really good moment.
The scene where the electrical wire is just it could kill so many people, and I felt so much dread and terror about to happen. You could hear the people screaming, and then Batman looks and he shoots his grapple gun. He goes up, and I know it's a little bit of a weird shot, but I kind of liked it at the same time where he's like cuts it,
and he falls.
I mean, it was a little bit awkward, but I still loved it because I think I loved what they were going for more than the actual visual, shot that I saw.
When I was like seeing trailers and stuff, and I saw the bat symbol on Robert Pattinson's chest, I kept saying to myself, I was like, it looks like it comes out.
Oh yeah, no, I thought it was gonna be like. There were so many rumors about how like it's the gun piece to his parents, but then I was like, oh, it's a knife. That's kind of cool. I was like, okay, I did not know that. I'm totally cool with that.
I really like the idea though that it was the gun that took his parents, and that he made it into something that he uses to fight against what happened to him. This is where we're gonna get into something that I don't think I liked.
I honestly, at first I would be like, yeah, but I understand. I think I understand. I mean, I know I liked it, but I think, yes, go on.
So just for people to understand, at the end of the movie, they tease the Joker. I'm not going to say this is a huge slight, but I'm just going to throw this out there. We currently have 2 Jokers in circulation. We don't know if Jared Leto's done. And supposedly Joaquin Phoenix is coming back for
Joker 2 is Joker official.
2. This time it's more personal. First, the shot they showed of him, which is only like this. It's like seriously this much of him. At first, I was like, looks more like Two-Face than the Joker.
Hey, oh no, I thought that too. But hey, you do see his super creepy teeth, which I loved. I like that.
Apparently, they've already created a design for him, I think. And they said that the design is supposed to really harken back more to the silent film The Man Who Laughs, which is also the name of a Joker comic that came out a long time ago. If you Google image The Man Who Laughs, you will know what I'm talking about.
No, yeah. It reminded me, the Arkham. So Arkham Asylum, he's like doing the whole Titan,
Yeah.
It reminds me of Arkham City, that version where he's like kind of like
part of it.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of, that kind of look.
The other reason that I didn't like them teasing the Joker is because Batman has so many good villains. So many. But they always keep coming back to the
Revert
Joker.
to Joker.
I understand that it's like his main antagonist. They are oil and water. But there are so many good characters. They actually asked Robert Pattinson, hey, what villain would you want to see? And I loved his answer. His answer was the Court of Owls. It's basically high society of Gotham, but they've been like quietly course correcting Gotham whenever something goes a little weird since like the 1800s. They are not new. They're very old. There are, however, by putting Joker and Riddler together, there's a couple of big teases there that I feel like not a lot of people know about. After Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo finished their run on the Batman comics, another guy started, and he did a great job. He's actually ex-CIA. His name is Tom King. And everyone thought, oh, when Tom King starts Batman, he's going to make it like cool gadgets and like CIA ops, but Batman doing them. It's going to be cool. No. So what he did was he made it much more brainy, much more of like an examination of Batman's mental state as he fights crime and how what different criminals do affect him. And one of the stories he decided to tell was called The War of Jokes and Riddles. And what happened in that was the Riddler and the Joker became like the 2 biggest gang leaders in Gotham. And it got so bad that every other villain or hero in Gotham had to pick a side because fighting both was too much.
My thoughts towards it are, I'm not like, I'm not like over the heels, like, oh my God, yes. But I will say this, Barry Keoghan, I think he is a phenomenal actor. And I think Matt Reeves chose him for a reason. And when
He's
I
one of
heard
those actors where I'm like, I know his face, but I don't know what I saw him in.
yeah, no, I understand that. Like he's kind of like in almost Robert Pattinson's shoes, like if he wasn't in Twilight and he just did low budget films.
Yeah,
like he did.
art house type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really what he's known for. And now I guess he's a little bit known for Dunkirk and Eternals, playing
Gotcha.
Druig.
I still need to see that.
Like I really think, okay, so if people want to know, to see if he has the potential of being Joker, research this film, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And
I need to see that.
It actually stars Colin Farrell as well. And Barry Keoghan, obviously. He does such a great job. And there are so many moments where I was thinking about it because I rewatched it a couple months ago when I heard that he was rumored to be Joker. And I was like, this dude has the potential of being just as good as Joaquin Phoenix as Joker, honestly. It does seem kind of like frustrating where it's like, okay, we had Joaquin, we had Jared Leto, and now we're going to get this version. But I also see it in a positive way because in a sense, we're going to also have 3 Batmans this year. We're going to have Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, Robert Pattinson. And I mean, in a sense, we had 3 Spider-Man last year / this year. And it's
that
obviously
made more sense though.
No, yeah, that made more sense. But and like obviously those are 3 different universes, 3 different films. With Joaquin and Jared and now Barry Keoghan. With this though, I'm excited in the sense of like we get to see multiple different iterations. We live in a time where that's possible. And granted, some audiences will be still a little bit confused, but I think majority now, because honestly, Marvel has kind of paved the way for general audiences to understand the multiverse concept. And now with Doctor Strange 2, and now we're going to get Flash. And I think people are going to be able to handle that there's this thing called different realities. So that's why I'm okay with it, because it's like, yeah, I get it. It's Joker. It's their most famous villain of all time as a popular character, especially for, the movie-going audiences. Like if they think about one villain on the DC, it's Joker.
They teased another villain in this movie really hard.
I think I know who you're going to talk about. Starts with an H.
Yes, it does. And they literally wrote it over his face. When I went into the movie, the only prediction I had was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to make Thomas Wayne dirty. Or I wonder if he's going to do something where he has to choose, like where like the mafia tells him, hey, you messed up and there has to be a price. Is it going to be your wife or is it going to be your son? And because any good parent would probably honestly choose for the life of their child to be spared over anyone else. I mean, I don't want to say any good parent, but I mean, odds are a parent wants their child to live and survive and thrive above all. So that was kind of my prediction going in, was like, oh, something about why Thomas died is going to be like Thomas's own fault. And I wasn't really right. Thomas just essentially tried to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And his moment of weakness wasn't, I want someone dead. It's just, I need this person to back off because I'm trying to take care of my family. Can you make them back off? And Falcone's like, yeah, sure. And kills them. Kind of like maybe they were trying to get Thomas Wayne in their pocket. But immediately Thomas was like, no, I'm going to take this to the authorities. You murdered somebody. And that's not what I wanted.
Final thoughts. Overall feelings with this film. Go right ahead.
Final feelings is I loved it and I'm looking forward to more. I really am. It didn't have like the, oh my gosh, every scene is electric like Dark Knight did. But comparing this to The Dark Knight can only go so far. These are 2 completely different movies. Yeah. And even the character of the city itself is different. Nolan's Gotham was like shiny and sheeny on top and slimy and grimy underneath. This one is made to feel like all of it is gross in some way. Even the parts that look clean feel gross.
Yeah.
And when you change the character of like the city itself, it changes the entire ethos or atmosphere of the movie and of the world that Batman is operating in. This is different. This is super different. It's darker, it's grimier, it's grittier, but it's still excellent. I highly recommend it, and I can't wait for more.
So before we end this review, I wanted to read at least 2 Rotten reviews. One is very, very short and sweet. Not really sweet, actually. It's very distasteful. And the other one is a decent length, and it's actually from somebody from the Seattle Times. Okay, so this review is from The Bulwark by Sunny Bunch. And it simply says, Batman Begins Again.
That's it? That's all it says?
That's all it says. I'm like, and it's 2 out of 4. I'm like, how is this Batman Begins Again? Can you care to, like, and I actually looked in further on the article. I was like, your opinions are invalid, honestly. So moving on from Sunny, you're dumb. I called you out, Sunny. Wow. And like I said, everyone has their own opinions, and I respect that. But when somebody just clearly states something like that, to me, I don't even.
The only thing this movie even really has in common with Batman Begins is that Batman is in the title of the movie, and that ultimately the climax of the movie is the entire city being in peril. That's about it.
And honestly, okay, I won't go there. Never mind. I don't want to compare. I actually don't like to compare, because I love the Nolan trilogy, but I also really love this film. So back to the worst review I've ever read in my entire life.
Oh boy, hit me.
Moira. MacDonald. MacDonald. Moira. What a fantastic last name.
Moira.
By Seattle Times. Top critic. Ooh, it's going to be good. Depressing, dark, and endless. I don't know about you, but this particular time in history does not seem like the moment for a movie that will leave you A, miserable, and B, wondering why nobody in Gotham City seems to have heard of light bulbs. Sorry that this isn't a Marvel film, that it's well lit up or whatever, but I can go on.
I'm gonna guess she's had a rough go of it the last.
I'm just saying, MacDonald, Miss MacDonald. I'm sorry. Were you having a rough night? But I'm sorry that happened. Yeah. But you shouldn't put that hate towards this film. Like when I read this, I was like, so when is a good time for a film like this to come out? Because in my mind, when I read that, I was like, so when there's no such thing as COVID, and when Russia's not being a total bunch of D-bags and attacking an innocent country for right now, then it's okay. There's no such thing as the perfect time to release a film, personally. And the whole reason for films, and this kind of is going to the ending for this review, is, and why I love doing reviews and why I love watching movies, is escapism. And I understand this is a very dark film, and I understand why somebody would be like, I don't want to be depressed. And personally,
I don't know if I would say this is a great escapist movie.
I know, but like for me, like when I watch a movie, and even at the end of the day, there is still hope in this film. There is still light at the end of the tunnel. It's not like
the movie's ultimate message was about hope.
Yeah, and like for me, I can understand if somebody personally, doesn't like that movie. But to me, Seattle Times has plenty of critics, right? But you guys chose the one person who probably wasn't best designated to represent your company for this film. So like for me,
we don't know that. We don't.
I mean, I mean, she might be the only one, but I don't like, I actually want to do some research. I actually want to look at Seattle Times and see other reviews. You know what, Tim? I'm going to do that right frickin' now.
Getting really invested in the Seattle Times.
Yeah, Seattle Times, Spider-Man, No Way Home. Let's just look at a recent film. That one's joyous, right? Let's see what they gave it. Spider-Man, Seattle Times, Spider-Man, No Way Home review. Sorry, guys. I'm committed to this. Now, this is how superheroes are supposed to be. Oh my God. Okay.
Is it Moira?
And it's more. I don't like her. I get it. I get it. It's full of fun. It's light, and it's actually well lit. It's light. There's light bulbs in it.
You know what I wish? And not even just because of this. When I read certain reviews, I wish that under a website, you know how like on IGN or GameSpot or whatever, you can click on the reviewer's profile or whatever. They have an account or whatever. I wish, and I can't tell if this would honestly ultimately end up being good or bad, but I wish under like a reviewer's bio, if someone is a critic, I want to know what some of their 10s are.
That'd be interesting.
If I was a critic, I'd want to be like, hey, these are some of the 10s that I have. Like, this is my taste in 10s. My taste is Jurassic Park, The Dark Knight, Disney's Lion King, Memento, stuff like that. Like, these are my 10s. This is the perspective I have. These are what my 1s look like. These are what my 5s look like. So that when someone reads like GameSpot giving the Batman a 6, okay,
I know.
What is that person's 10? Like, what is it? Because maybe the things that make it a 6 for him is something that's going to make it an 8 or a 9 for me.
And here's the thing. Like I said in the beginning of this video, everybody has their opinions. We need to respect each other. At the end of the day, I do respect you, McDonald. But for me, when you go into a film like that, try to really have an open mind. And for me, I feel like looking at a jarring review between Spider-Man No Way Home and The Batman, they are completely different films. So for me, I'm already getting a feeling of what she's more into, right? To me, it's not really a valid review to just go and watch a movie and be like, it's a 2 out of 4, which is essentially saying it's a 5. It's mediocre out of 10. And to me, anybody, like, honestly, I would fight. Not fight physically, but like I would fight for this film. I will fight you, McDonald. Meet me outside.
Fight you, Moira.
I know you're in Seattle. We live in the same state. I mean, in the sense of like, I would fight for this movie with words and discussions and conversations. And obviously that's the thing about film and thing about opinions. It's a beautiful thing. It starts conversations and seeing somebody else's perspective. And, you know, she has a different perspective on it, which is fine. But to me, it seemed like a preconceived notion of like, she already knows this movie's dark and she doesn't like how there's lack of light bulbs. It's lack of lighting. And I get everybody has their personal preference, but to me, it just seemed a little bit like she might have already had an opinion before even watching it.
I mean, she loved No Way Home and didn't like this, and I loved both. But I think maybe her approach to movies is escapism, and this is not a movie for escapism. It's a good movie. It's a movie that you have to pay attention to. It's a movie where the Riddler it's inspired by a real life actual serial killer, and the ultimate plan he has to have people fire down on innocent people from the rafters from somewhere where people can't fight back. Like I said, He gets them together to commit group cowardice. It feels real. It feels real. This is not a movie that's supposed to feel like an escape from reality. It's a movie that I didn't go into thinking I'm gonna come out feeling like, well, back to real life. Like, it's gritty, it's dark, at times it's gross. Does it make a great date movie? Probably. I mean, it's a good movie. In that sense, you could argue it's an escape because it's better than most movies.
For me, it's kind of like on the levels of The Dark Knight, where when I press play, I'm in for the ride and I'm watching it. I will say this though, it is a harder rewatch in the sense of it is more focused and it is more of a depressing tone than The Dark Knight, which is kind of weird because The Dark Knight is really dark as well. But with The Dark Knight, it is more of a blockbuster feel. And with this one, it's more of like, you know, a murder mystery with a lot of intentions for slow burning moments. And I love that.
Both this and The Dark Knight are extremely refined in completely different ways.
But okay, this video is so freaking long.
It's
We gotta
so long.
end this thing.
So long.
So overall, guys, I will say this. I give it still I personally, okay. Critically, I would give it a 9.5.
Actually just about where I am too, I think.
Critically,
That's just about where I am.
Because there's no such thing as a perfect film. Even the movies that I've given 10s before, there's no such thing as a perfect film.
No, you shut your face.
But I know I've given a lot of 10s. But what I'm saying is, like, even with my 10s, like, that's just personally like my perfect film. You know what I mean? So for me, critically, like, for me to be like, oh, I have to give a professional opinion. My professional opinion is a 9.5. My giddy, but like,
I know, right?
Like, kind of like,
like,
you know,
it's a 9.5, but in math they taught me to round up, so
it's a 10. Guys,
Sure.
Please let me know what you guys thought of the film in the comment section down below. Leave a like on this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be seeing you guys soon. Peace.
Take care.